Coming up tonight, the Seaside meets the sunshine. We check out some of the entertainment venues on board, and we go to the main dining rooms. It's all coming up, so let's set sail. Welcome to day 2 of the cruise view from on board the MSC Seaside. Today was Sunday, November 25th, 2018, and first day at sea on board the Seaside for this sailing. Was a beautiful day, an absolutely perfect day that you could want for a sea day. And our location was 24 degrees and 14 minutes north by 73 degrees and 54 minutes west. We were at sea sailing towards Puerto Rico, and the big thing today, as was the case yesterday, was a lot of ship spotting. So last night after I recorded that episode, went out, looked for a few more ships, and of course Celebrity Equinox continued to be right in front of us, sailing ahead. But in addition to her, I also spotted the Holland America Amsterdam sailing in the opposite direction, likely headed back to Miami or Fort Lauderdale. So we passed a second ship last night. And then today, as you'd expect, the Equinox continues to sail on ahead of us, getting a little bit farther away throughout the day. She got a bit smaller, and she seemed to be straying a bit farther to the side away from us as well as ahead. But in addition to her, this morning we passed the Celebrity Reflection. She actually sailed in the opposite direction in between us and the Equinox. So that was 2 Solstice class ships passing in the day. And this afternoon we saw the Norwegian Sun sailing in the opposite direction as well. So 2 ships today in addition to the Equinox. So it's certainly been a busy ship spotting sailing so far this voyage. And as I mentioned, our weather today was absolutely perfect. We had a sunrise this morning at 7:28 a.m. with a sunset at 5:08 p.m. today. And we had a high, according to the daily planner, of 94 degrees. Checking the TV throughout the day, I really don't know how accurate it is. It's been saying mainly 78. It seems like it probably got to the low 80s. 94 seems a bit high, but perhaps we did get that high. It did seem very hot today, but I would think it's probably more likely about 83, 85 degrees out there today. And the skies were partly cloudy. A lot of sunshine, a lot of blue skies, but there were a few clouds around. And this afternoon we did get one very quick light sprinkling of rain, as one dark cloud did pass over the ship, and didn't last long, only a couple minutes. Didn't even really chase people off the deck, but it was a little sprinkle that passed through. Winds have been going actually with the ship, so we've had a relative wind speed of about 5 knots. Sometimes it's peaked for a moment up to about 9, other times it's dropped to about 1 or 2, so it's been a pretty calm wind sailing so far this voyage. And the seas as well have cooperated. It was an absolutely picture-perfect, beautiful, smooth seas out there. They were just perfectly smooth, barely any movement to them. And the ship's been obviously smooth as a result of those perfect seas. And tonight, with those beautiful seas, and we do have a full moon, we also had an absolutely beautiful view of the moon reflecting off of those smooth seas. So then, moving on to the daily planner for today. It was a pretty quiet day. There really wasn't much of anything on the daily planner for the daytime. It was all pretty much at night. The only thing really to mention during the day was that since it was sunny, everybody was out on the pool deck. So the pool decks were absolutely packed. I have never seen a pool deck so incredibly jam-packed with people before. They were everywhere on this ship. And a lot of that seems to have to do with the fact that the yacht club does take up the majority of the deck space, which means that almost everybody is restricted to that Miami Beach pool area. And you can stray a little bit farther away. There are a few other areas of decks that you can go to lounge in, but only the Miami Beach pool area really has direct access to both the sun and a pool. So of course that is where the majority of people went. And there were a few different activities held today up in the pool area, some different things using TV, as well as at noon there was a welcome aboard dance party up on the Miami Beach pool area to help entertain people and pass the time during this beautiful sea day that we had today. But then tonight, as you can see, day 2, even when we're on MSC, is still the formal night. So for day 2, we did get to our main dining room seating. It was a 5:30 seating in the SeaShore restaurant, which is located on deck 5. And it was our first time in the main dining room for this sailing with MSC. So obviously it was a slightly different experience than we're used to with Royal. But the big thing was it was just very rushed. They have 3 seatings on the ship, depending on the restaurant you're in. If you're in the SeaShore restaurant, your seatings could be 5:30, 7:30, or 9:30. If you're in the other restaurant, you'll be about 15 minutes before each of those 3 periods. So a single seating only gets 2 hours to enter, eat, leave, and have them turn the venue around. So if you're not there within the first 15 minutes of your seating, they will actually lock the door, not let you in. And the seating itself is, as I mentioned, very rushed. So just like Royal Caribbean started doing recently, they do take your complete order right up front when you sit down to know your starters, your entrees, and your desserts so that they can get it all ready. But what's a little unusual is the food starts flowing, and for today, I got the eggplant parmesan for an appetizer to start, and that was very good, delicious eggplant. And I got the French onion soup. Of course, my barometer of a good restaurant is that French onion soup that we always get on every ship. Got it today at MSC Seaside. It was very different than the Royal Caribbean one. It was a much thicker soup than we're used to seeing, and it was absolutely delicious. So much flavor to it, really an all-around great French onion soup. But with the French onion soup, it was not overly hot. It was served just warm enough to eat. And that's the case with all the food. It seems like to try to get people through, they've cut some corners to speed things up. And one of them is the food in general is always served just warm enough. The soup is never burning hot. The coffees, any of the drinks are never burning hot. Everything is just over the edge of warm to not be considered cold, so that as soon as it's on the table, you can eat it and get done with it and move on to the next. Because every time you finish a dish, they do bring out the next one, and they do that with everybody at the table. So for me, I got 2 starters today, and my mother only got 1, which meant we both got our first starters. But then when my second starter came out, as soon as I finished the first, her entree came out. So they try to keep everybody moving on to the next dish and keep bringing out their dishes to get them out of the venue as quickly as possible. But that means that people at the same table will fall out of sync with each other, which isn't the greatest of experiences. So it just seems like it's a very rushed experience and not that nice, relaxing, sit-down, formalized dinner service that you usually expect from a main dining room on a cruise. And in addition to that rushed experience, they have 3 seatings, which you would think gives them tons of capacity. But the venue is so incredibly jam-packed with tables. Everybody is sitting right on top of each other. You got somebody right next to you. You've got maybe an inch or 2 between your tables. It is absolutely packed and so incredibly loud you can't even hear the person sitting across from you when you're talking. By the end of the service, I really wanted to just get out of there as quick as possible. At the beginning, I was annoyed how quick things were. By the end, I wish they went quicker because it was just so loud to sit in there. It just gave you a headache. You wanted to leave there as quick as possible. So it's certainly not the pleasant main dining room experience you want when you go on a cruise. But continuing on with what I had, at least, moving on from the starter then for my entree, I got something off of the classic menu, the panetta pasta with Alfredo sauce. And this was one where I kind of expected it to be really good with the experience I've had with all the pastas. Every pasta dish I've had in buffets on board have been absolutely incredible. This one was a bit of a letdown. It really was a bland, kind of generic, nothing special, penne Alfredo. And Even the Parmesan cheese that they put on is just the generic sprinkled Parmesan cheese, not the nice shavings or formalized stuff that you usually get when you're in a main dining room. But for dessert, I got the chocolate lava cake, and that, as has been the case with everything in the buffet, was an absolutely incredible dish. That one that was just filled with chocolate on the inside. As soon as you cut into the cake, you had all that ooey gooey chocolate. And this is something where Royal Caribbean has always kind of failed. They've had some decent chocolate lava cakes, but never anything like this. This was an absolutely perfectly done chocolate lava cake. But just like everything else, it was not hot. It was not burning hot, melt the ice cream kind of hot. It was just warm enough to be good enough. So it seems like they do cut some corners to really try to get people through and move things along. In total, it only took us about an hour and 10 minutes to eat dinner, and for us, that is incredibly fast. Typically, when we go out to eat, it's a 2-hour thing, and the main dining room, sometimes it can extend a little bit beyond there depending on how quick the service is. So an hour and 10-minute dinner is incredibly fast for us. Even last week in Disney World, almost every meal took 2 hours or more to go through. Then following dinner, we had, just like every cruise, have dinner and then you go to your show. Tonight, our show in the main dining room was The Dream. And one of the neat things about MSC is every single show is their production cast, and every show is designed to cater to a slightly different audience. Instead of bringing guest entertainers to meet everyone's needs, the cast has to perform completely different shows in order to meet all those needs. And this was certainly a different show than yesterday. Yesterday's was a very traditional song and dance, Frank Sinatra tribute. The Dream, on the other hand, was a bit more abstract. You had some different acrobatic elements to it. It was just a lot of out there kind of elements to it rather than just song and dance. So it was certainly more entertaining, and the songs were much more recent that were used in this show. So it was definitely a much better show than the one yesterday, which I really did not find all that entertaining. Tonight's was a very entertaining show. And prior to that, they actually got started about 10 minutes early to bring out all of the officers and introduce every officer on board the MSC Seaside, as well as let the captain say a few words to all the guests on board. And following that, we headed across the ship to the atrium, where down on deck number 5 they had an event, Officers and Gentlemen, which involved the officers of the MSC Seaside out doing some dances with the guests, letting everybody get to meet the officers a little more personally, as well as having the captain off to the side taking photos with passengers. There was no real formalized captain's welcome reception as we've seen on other ships, but they did have this little event to allow the guests to get to know the officers a little more personally than those welcome events normally are. That was at 8:30 then, so following that at 9 o'clock then we headed into the Haven, where they had the Love Game show. This is something that is completely new, completely different than anything I've seen on a cruise before. It was a bit of a hybrid of Battle of the Sexes with couples instead of gender dividing the teams. So just like the Love and Marriage game show, 3 different couples of varying relation lengths were chosen and participated, but instead of answering questions and proving how much they know about each other and their romance, they instead had a series of challenges to take. And these challenges were certainly hilarious and a little bit on the edge of adult only. So it was definitely a great event, and if you're on the MSC Seaside, or I'm sure it's on the other MSC ships as well, be sure to see this one because it is certainly an entertaining show. And if you're on other ships and you've seen the Battle of the Sexes, you know what these kinds of shows are like. So that was certainly a great show, and just like everything else, it was a shorter one. It was only about 30 minutes for that game show as well, just like everything else on board. So tonight, in addition to being formal night, it is the formal Gatsby night, officially. So then at 10 o'clock in the atrium, the MSC Seaside activities team put on the Romantic Gatsby, just a little skit performance to get everybody into that Gatsby mood. And that was at 10 o'clock because then at 10:30 over in the Haven Lounge they did have a Gatsby party. I did not go to the Gatsby party because instead I stayed in the atrium because at 10:30 they also had the MSC Seaside production cast put on Ancient Egypt Revisited, another one of those little skits just like we saw with the Latin one last night. And this one involved ancient Egypt. There's a little more of an actual plot and story to this one, even though it is only 5-10 minute performances. This one had a little bit more substance to it. And it was certainly an interesting event to go see. There were not a lot of people that came out to check it out, but it was definitely something that you wouldn't want to miss. They had some contortionists, a lot of neat elements involved in this one. It's a lot more than you'd normally expect from an atrium performance. Usually you think of just singers, dancers, maybe some lighting or video elements, but they definitely had a little bit more to this performance that certainly made it worthwhile to see. And that was at 10:30. It was listed as a 10-minute event, lasted about 12 minutes, so at 10:42 when it ended, I then had to get across the ship to the Metropolitan Theater because at 10:45 they had the first adult showing of BeerProv, which is the onboard improv comedy troupe that they have. And this was an incredible event. I've seen a lot of different entertainment shows, a lot of great ones, all different kinds of performances. We've seen all different kinds of comedians, but I think by far this was the most entertaining comedian, the most humorous show that I have seen on any ship. It was absolutely hilarious, and the team are on board permanently. They are a part of the MSC Seaside, so it's not like you gotta hope you catch them when they're on board. They are always here on every single sailing, and they put on multiple performances. Earlier today they had a family version, which obviously is not R-rated and adult only like tonight's show was, but they also have 2 more of these shows throughout the sailing, so a total of 3 of these in addition to the family ones, and every show is different. It is entirely improv. It's all interacting with the audience for members of the team, asking the audience for suggestions, tips, doing all different kinds of little acts and games to basically improv and provide some entertainment and humor for everybody, which is the perfect way to end an evening. That was 10:45 and pretty much the last thing for today before calling it a night. So that was a great event and one that I will certainly be checking out the other 2 of because it was definitely something not to be missed. So that took place in the Metropolitan Theater, the entertainment venue on board. And today for our venue tour, we're going to be taking a look at some of the entertainment area things, the Metropolitan Theater, as well as the Piazza, this area that I'm in right now, and see what these venues have to offer. The entertainment center of the MSC Seaside is the Metropolitan Theater. Located forward, the single floor of seating has a capacity of 944 seats that extends from the stage on deck 6 to the main entrance on deck 7. With steep seating and an attention to views, not a single seat is obstructed, ensuring that every seat offers a good spot for the show. With an MSC original showing 3 times a night at 6:15, 8 o'clock, and 9:15, guests have many options to enjoy the evening entertainment. When exiting through the bottom of the theater on deck 6, you can pass through a hall that leads to the Piazza Grande. This large open space features a central casual lounge surrounded by shops. The most prominent feature, though, is the Venchi 1878 chocolate bar. Featuring a massive chocolate waterfall, this chocolate confectionery offers all kinds of sweets for sale, and everything is made right on board. Hidden beyond there is the business center, offering a small conference room. Directly above that, and visible through the mini atrium that spans deck 5 through 8, is the main casino. This traditional shipboard casino occupies the primary passageway between the Metropolitan Theater and atrium. Unlike most, though, while the casino is a designated smoking area, a powerful ventilation system combined with intentionally pumped-in scents help to counter the typical smoky environment, making it a safe area for all guests to enjoy and pass through. So that was the entertainment area. It's a different one than some of the ones we see on Royal Caribbean. Just that single floor. You actually get pretty good views almost everywhere you sit because it is a single floor. There are no poles, there's nothing to really get in the way. It's a pretty standard theater, and the stage is relatively high, so you get a good view even when you're down low. And they do utilize that full theater. They go into the aisles, they go down on the floor, they take advantage of all the space to do these performances throughout the sailing. One of the interesting things about the theater is that when you're entering, they actually have a sign that you're not allowed to bring any kind of glass, drinks, food, anything into the theater. We're used to seeing them actually sell drinks in the theater and try to make money off it. Here they actually don't. And for the most part, people aren't sitting around for an hour waiting for a show to start. They're showing up a couple minutes before for everything, whether it be something in the atrium or the theater, so you really don't have too much need for those drinks, especially when the shows are only about 30 to 40 minutes long, so you're never spending more than probably 50 minutes in any venue at any given time. But somewhere that you do spend just a little bit longer is the SeaShore or the Ipanema Restaurants, which are the main dining rooms on board the ship. The MSC Seaside features not one, but two main dining rooms. Located on Deck 5 after the atrium is the SeaShore Restaurant, while directly above it is the Ipanema Restaurant. The SeaShore Restaurant is the most heavily used, with both a breakfast and lunch offered most days. At dinner time, depending on the booked category, guests may have a choice of My Choice dining, or they can show up at the SeaShore Restaurant anytime between 5:30 and 9:30. As well as traditional dining. Traditional dining offers 3 times in the Ipanema Restaurant, 5:15, 7:15, and 9:15, while the SeaShore also has 3 seatings, each serving just 15 minutes later. So they are Deck 5 and 6, right above and below each other, but they are not connected. There's no opening in the middle, no connection between them at all. They are 2 completely independent restaurants, but unlike many ships which have 2 venues, they are right next to each other, which does make it a little easier to find them and help with the flow around the ship because all the dining is grouped together like that. So that about does it for today. We are going to be setting the clocks back an hour tonight. We get San Juan tomorrow, and they are, of course, off by an hour from our time zone, so we will be setting the clocks back an hour tonight. And then tomorrow we will arrive in San Juan, a very late arrival in San Juan. We are supposed to be docked at 5 o'clock. We should be seeing and passing the fort about 4 p.m., so a very late arrival. We'll be arriving just before dinner time, but we don't depart until 1 a.m., so you do have a little bit of time, but you also kind of don't because of the fact that it is entirely at night from dinner time on. So that'll be tomorrow. San Juan, evening in San Juan, get to see this ship all lit up from the outside. But for now, I'm Picone. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the links.